Hello, folks. We just thought we'd like to introduce you. As we go about our lives, when we're out together, people are always coming up to and asking us a couple of questions. So we thought we would start off with those questions because we're guessing you have them too. Number one, where are you from? My answer is nice and easy. I'm from right here in Dallas, Texas.
And I am from York in the United Kingdom in the north of England. I grew up in the rural county of Lincolnshire on the east in a small town called Market Raisin. But my family comes from Yorkshire originally.
People are always telling me, the reason I asked is because you sound like you have something of an English accent, which, thank you very much. The reason for that is, after we got married, I lived in England with Andrew for a few years, so I probably picked something up there. Which leads us into our next question. How did you meet?
Oh, we met over the internet on a Christian chat and dating site. I, to be honest, had found relationships frustrating for many long years and was praying and praying and praying over a long period of time, and spent about a year every night going into the garden of the church just round the corner from where I lived in York, asking the Lord to provide me with a wife. And one night he said to me that I have heard your prayers. The answer is yes, but you will find her in the most unexpected of places. And I began to think, well, where could that be? Could it be in the first aid room at York City Football Club, or the races, or somebody I would meet at work? No, the Lord had a different plan for me.
Yes, this is one of the reasons we know that the Lord definitely has a sense of humor. Another way is that, they say that when you put yourself on dating sites, you should put your best foot forward, put a perfect picture on there, and if you meet somebody in person, look your very best and don't say anything negative, just appear like the perfect person. Well, after having been frustrated with some bad relationships I won't go into, as a last-ditch thing, yes, I freely admit, people, it was a last-ditch thing. I was desperate. Put my profile on this dating site. Nobody responded. And because I had had some bad relationships, I had decided I'm not going to chase after anybody. I'm not going to be desperate anymore. I'm going to work on me. And Lord, if you want somebody in my life, you bring them to me. Crickets chirping. Nothing happened. Well, I had resigned myself to being single when several months later, out of the blue, Andrew contacted me. And the reason this is funny, and I talk about perfect people, because at the time that Andrew contacted me, I was at one of the worst points in my life. Long story, so I won't go into all of it, but I had been in a terrible car accident. And I was fine. I walked away, but the car was not fine. It was totaled. I had cut rate insurance because I did not make very much money at the time. It was all I could afford. So cut rate insurance, couldn't get the car replaced. And it was an awful mess. I was in bad financial debt, struggling even just to get to work since I no longer had a car to get there. I mean, it was not pretty. I was under a lot of stress because of all this in my life, and that's when Andrew walked into it. So much for perfect person. So that's how I knew the Lord must have led us together, because he stayed with me. He stayed by me through all this going on in my life, and well, we're still here.
And the funny thing was that I had to contact Laurie twice before she responded to me, because my first email I sent her, I got no reply back. And the funny thing was that I'd gone onto this dating site to look for somebody in United Kingdom, and didn't get very far. And one night was just looking internationally just out of pure interest. It was about midnight, and I found Laurie's profile, and she said she liked English football or soccer. I thought, oh great, that'll make a good email pal, and she also said she worked for an airline, so that'd be easy to get over. So I thought, this might sound like it may be a good friendship here. But it turned out, I soon realised that it was more than just friendship that was brewing. And one night when Laurie said that she would like a relationship with me, but can we just wait for her to get over some bad stuff that had happened, I sat down when we'd finished chatting to each other on Yahoo and said to the Lord, you are kidding, aren't you? You cannot be seriously expecting me to have a serious relationship with somebody the other side of the Atlantic, can you? And then I remembered the prophecy that God had given me, that I would find my wife in the most unexpected of places. Yep, American Midwest was one of the last places I would have looked. But that's how I know that this is from God.
So yes, Andrew stayed by me. As he mentioned, at that time I was living in Denver and working for an airline out at their airport. So I had flight benefits, employee discounts on our airline, and was able to fly back and forth a few times to go and visit him. And I have to admit, I had always loved England, all right? And this was another way that I knew that the Lord must be in this, because when I was growing up, I loved England. I loved reading those historical novels by, say, Sharon K. Penman, famous British historical novelist. And her books are about real people, kings and such, and as a character in another book put it once, it was basically history of conversations. It was about famous people, but she just, made up conversations for them. What were they feeling and such. Very, very excellent novels. So I fell in love with Britain. In fact, what is it that you like to joke about British history, me knowing more?
Yes, Laurie's very much into British history, and I would say knows more about British history than I do.
He's always joking that when we go back to visit in England and we'll be at some historical site and he'll say, oh, that looks nice. Did you know that in the time of Henry VIII, this would belong to such and such? And he'll be like, how did you know that? Because I studied your history. I love it. Gee. So, yes, so I traveled back and forth. Bless his heart. He scraped up the money to come and visit me a couple of times. And then, if you're a fan of Downton Abbey, like I am, you'll love this story. On one of those visits, this was in 2004. On one of those visits, I was over in England visiting him, and do you remember the end of, I believe, was it season 2, when Matthew proposed to Mary? How it was all romantic. It was near Christmas, and they were outside the big house, and it was softly snowing. Ah, well, Andrew had planned a nice romantic proposal outside under the stars, and oh, take it away. What happened to your romantic proposal?
It rained. It was dark, it was October, it was cold and raining. So, like true Baptists and Methodists, I proposed in the pub.
Woohoo!
And it worked.
There you go.
So God can use any old place to fulfill his purposes.
Yes.
One of the things that helped me, which on the surface of it would seem like a bit of a disaster, was that after 6.5 years, the company I worked for decided that they were having a restructuring, and that my job became redundant. And so I got a nice payoff of several £1,000s, which I knew then would pay for flights across the Atlantic and also for weddings. Perfect timing once again. Thank you, Lord.
Yes. And at about the same time, I was able to get a transfer back here to Texas. Shout outs to Waco Station. Love you guys. Had a blast there. But I got a bonus from my company for transferring, being willing to move back. So it was lovely. It was lovely. So we got married. How many times? Not one time, not 2 times,
but 3 times.
3 times!
Once in Laurie's mum and dad's front room, so that we could get the marriage license for Laurie to apply for her visa to stay in the United Kingdom. The second time was the wedding proper in Laurie's home church in Duncanville in Texas.
Pastor Keith, hello!
And then we had a third ceremony for my family and friends over in York.
Yes. So as he said, first time was in the living room of our little house. My dad did the ceremony. My mother and my sister were the witnesses. That was for the visa. And then 2 church ceremonies. One was, the American one was the actual legal ceremony proper. And then when we went over to Britain, we had what they call a blessing ceremony for his friends and family in the church that he attended, which was actually very lovely because a friend of Andrew's at that time, her husband was an Anglican minister.
Yes, he was serving as a vicar in the church in the outskirts of York, and with them being friends, Laurie and I thought it would be nice if he could help to administer the communion. So we were holding the ceremony in a Methodist church, the service led by the Methodist minister, as well as an Anglican vicar. So we were crossing denominational barriers.
Yay!
It is one thing that we want to achieve with First Century Christian Fellowship, is to go across denominational barriers and get back to our roots as a church.
Yes, he mentioned communion. Because the Methodists are a liturgical church, as part of their weddings / blessing ceremonies, they have communion at the end. And so that was actually very lovely, because it wasn't just Andrew and me, but the congregation was invited to come and participate as well, if they wanted to. And it was very lovely. It was very moving. Yes. And so that was in 2004. I had my visa by then, so I was more than happy to come and live in the country from all those books. Oh my goodness, I loved it. Being able to be there was literally just a dream come true. York, the city that Andrew lived, is about 4 hours north of London?
Driving, yes.
Driving, about 4 hours north of London. And very, very historical. No offense to all Londoners. The son and daughter-in-law of a dear friend of ours live in London, so no offense to Londoners, but I actually far prefer York. It's smaller, so you have more of a community feel, and there's so much history in York. As we've talked about, it actually started life as a Roman fort, and this is in one of the videos that you'll see on our website. It started as a Roman fort. Then who came in next?
In the 700s, the Vikings came over from Scandinavia, from Norway and Sweden and Denmark.
So if you're watching these shows on the History Channel, you're watching part of our city. Ancient Romans, if you're watching that series on the Bible, when they get to the New Testament stuff, ancient Romans, we've seen some of their ruins. If you're watching that other show, the Vikings, yeah, all that pillaging they did, eventually they did that to our city, York, and then they liked it so much they said, oh, well, just stay here and camp here, make it our city. So it turned into a Viking city. And
at the time of the Vikings, it became England's capital.
Well, there you go. Okay. So, yes, very, very historical city. You can see many of the remains from those 2 periods. We talked about York Minster in our introductory video. Beautiful, beautiful cathedral there. Lovely things to see. You can still walk on the walls that were around from ancient Roman times. Just wonderful, wonderful city. There's a river. I love this river. I love saying the name of this river. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No, you say it. It sounds better with you.
It's the River Ouse.
I love that. The River Ouse. It's actually spelled O-U-S-E because why? Well, why is it spelled O-U-S-E? Well, ooze.
Because O-U is pronounced oo.
Oh, But I mean, is it a Viking word? It's a something.
Yeah, I believe it's a Viking word.
Somewhere from back in
Yeah.
ancient times. It means something or other. But it's pronounced ooze. So and it runs through the heart of York, so you can take some lovely strolls along the river. Andrew and I used to do that, weather permitting, just beautiful strolls along it. So it was a lovely city. Came and settled there with Andrew in 2004. God kept telling Andrew something through the next few years.
Yes, the Lord was telling us that He's going to be moving us over to live in the United States. Laurie had said that she would like at some stage to move back to America, and I felt, well, she's come to live in my country, then I can hardly say no to going to living in hers. And in the beginning of 2007, Laurie's younger sister got engaged and set a date for her wedding as September the 1st, and because of our lack of funds, originally only Laurie was going to go. But then she got a new job, and we had enough money for us both to go. And then the bill started to come. Things started to get a bit tight, and we prayed about this, and we strongly felt that the Lord was saying to us that He was going to move us over to America, and that it would happen very quickly, that there wouldn't be much time to prepare. We would just get up and go. And to cut a long story short, after our holiday to Belgium, our landlord decided to jack up the rent by quite a lot of money. That would have meant that we would have been bringing in less than we were paying out. We prayed about it and felt now is the time to go. So in less than 3 months, we had arranged everything and landed at Dallas Fort Worth International Airport the end of August 2007.
Back in the springtime, we had already booked the flights as a vacation just to come over for my sister's wedding. So when the Lord said quickly, He wasn't kidding, He meant quickly. It suddenly went from a fun vacation to a very hectic and stressful move, and I'm sure many people can probably sympathize with that. We tried to get rid of most of our stuff during that period. I must be the only person in the world who can outsell something on eBay, because we could not even sell our stuff. However, we prayed about that, and we felt the Lord saying, I want you to give it away. I want you to bless other people by giving your things away and trusting me for your finances. And so that's what we did. We donated all of our stuff, all of our furniture, the clothing we were getting rid of, etc., to a couple of charity shops, the Salvation Army and a charity that ran a thrift shop as well. And so when we washed up at the end of August, we just had a couple of suitcases and a few boxes of books. I was not going to give up my books. But other than that, we just had a couple of suitcases of stuff between us. And I remember after my parents picked us up at the airport and brought us back to their house, thinking, this is how much Mary and Joseph and the baby Jesus must have felt when the angel told Joseph, quick, pack it up, head off to Egypt. Herod wants to kill you. And they had to leave in the middle of the night. That's kind of how we felt, quickly having to get rid of all our stuff.
And it's the way that the Israelites left Egypt.
Oh, that's
on the night
another
of
one.
Passover, where they had to be girded in their loins and ready to run. And indeed they did. And the Lord delivered them.
So, we won't go into detail about the past few years. There's a lot of stuff that has happened. Suffice it to say, we went through some more difficulties. Oh, Lord have mercy. If anybody here has attempted to legally immigrate and get a green card, you have our utmost sympathy, because been there, done that. It took a whole flippin' year to get his green card. It was a nightmare of bureaucracy and paperwork and fees. And of course that whole time he was unemployed, and the jobs that I could find paid diddly squat, so we were living with my parents. Oh my gosh. And then at one point he got very sick with a serious illness, and just medical bills piled up. It's been a rough time, but the Lord has blessed us. In spring of last year, finally able to move out of my parents and into a place of our own. So, how did we come here to be doing this? Our particular ministry. Oh my goodness, how many years ago? This has been several years in the making.
This will be several years in the making. It was when we lived in York, and we were sat in the cafe of Tesco's, which is a big hypermarket over in Great Britain, and we were talking about the desire to go into some kind of ministry together, and we were comparing notes and realised that we were on the same page, that we were both heading in the same direction, and it came in dribs and drabs. The Lord gave us a name for our ministry, of First Century Christian Fellowship, and last spring we were planning a trip to England in the summer, and we felt the Lord saying to us that shouldn't just be a tourist trip and seeing my family, but more of a film shoot, as we, with lots of history over in York, and particularly in the Minster, and behind the Minster in the Treasurer's House. There's lots of things that we could make videos of, and so we did that, and things started coming together. And back end of 2012, we felt the Lord was saying that He was going to use the resources that we already had to multiply for His glory, but in the same way that Jesus multiplied the fish and the loaves, and from very little resources made it into a great deal. And so beginning of this year, on New Year's Day 2013, our site went live. So our ministry is developing.
Yes, as Andrew said, back in the springtime of last year, we had planned just another vacation to go visit his family, like we did every couple of years. And we finally felt the Lord saying, we'd been waiting for His timing, and we finally felt the Lord saying, now is the time where I'm releasing you. Time to start working on this. And so we felt Him saying that this time when you go back to England, instead of the usual touristy home videos, and we've got plenty of those which we can show you in the future, but instead of taking those this time, now start thinking in terms of your ministry. What can you do for me? And it just, there is no other word to describe it. It just really clicked. That's when we knew history, spiritual history. And so we got out my Audrey Hepburn calendar, and we planned that vacation like a film shoot. I mean, literally, we wrote on the little boxes on the days, go here, go there. And then, of course, it all got rearranged once we actually got there. But the Lord was good. He was good. He pulled some wonderful things out of it. And people just graciously gave us permission to come in and film. The Minster gave us permission to come in and film for a day. The National Trust, the organization that Andrew used to work for, which runs historical sites around England, graciously gave us permission to come in to one of their sites and do some videos, which were really cool. You're really going to enjoy the story of Harry and his Roman ghosts there. And so it was just awesome to see how it just all came together, to see the Lord's hand and all that. And we had a blast, quite frankly. Steven Spielberg may never have any competition from us, but we had a blast doing all this filming. And we cannot conclude this without talking about our visual Bible experience. You talk about the Lord being in the midst of something. I mean, oh my goodness. One day, this is a 2-week vacation, and after a week or so of running here and there and yonder, we were staying with his family in a village in Louth, which, where in the heck is that?
That's in the county of Lincolnshire.
Which is nowhere near yours.
Yeah, it's probably about 3.5 hours drive from London, or an hour and a half, hour and 3/4 from York.
So we were staying with his mother in her little village of Louth there. And one day, after all this running around back to York and over to Lincoln to film there, we were just tired, and we decided we'd take a day off, especially for Andrew since he'd been doing all the driving. We'd take a day off and we'd just go putter around Louth, see what was there. So we're walking around without the camera. We're just tourists today, resting. And we walked up the hill, and where did we walk to?
St. James's Church in Louth. And there, like a lot of the older churches in England, have what they call stained glass windows. And in the St. James's Church, they have various stained glass windows depicting Bible stories. And so the idea would be for us to look at the window and guess what passage or story from the Bible was being depicted by the window.
Yes, we went into the church. We're looking at the windows just like tourists. Oh, isn't that beautiful? And it began to dawn on us. Wait a minute, doesn't that look familiar? We know that story. And go on to the next window. Wait a minute, doesn't that look familiar? Wait a minute, we know that story. Oh, and it began to dawn on us. Around the church, they told the Bible. Whoever created these windows and put them in, they told the story of the Bible in pictures. It was just the most incredible experience. And so we had so much fun just going all around the church trying to figure out. We were not always successful. Some of these windows, we do not know what stories they're trying to tell, so you're going to have to help us. But, okay, we got about 90% of them. And then as we were leaving and going back down the hill, it occurred to us,
why don't we put that on our site as one of our features?
all right,
The visual Bible experience. We will have a different stained glass window each week, and challenge our visitors to guess which story from the Bible is being depicted in the window of the week.
And not just to guess like a game, but to really reflect upon the window, because they are beautiful windows. Reflect upon what story is this, who's in it, what are they doing, how do you feel as you engage with the window. In other words, study the Bible like your ancestors did. You know, for most of church history, people have been illiterate. Very few people have actually been able to read the Word of God. They learned about God through those stained glass windows in the churches. And so we just thought that would be a really cool idea. Can we learn the Bible like our ancestors did without using any words? And so we're leaving the church. Oh, wouldn't this be a cool idea? We run back to Mom's house, get our camera. But the St. James people must have been rather startled when here we come,
Yes.
running back in again with our camera. And so we've spent another hour, this time combing through the church, filming all the windows. And we just had so much fun. It really was a wonderful, wonderful experience. So thank you very much to the staff there at St. James for putting up with our craziness there. They were so friendly and so helpful. Thank you. And we are looking so forwards to launching the website for that. So that was our trip. We came back home. And as Andrew said, we have been laboring. With our limited resources, again, like Mary and Joseph here, we have been laboring to put this all together. But the Lord has been really good. It's been challenging. I'm not going to pretend it's been easy. But we have learned so much through this experience of putting together a website, of doing these videos. And we just really, really hope that you'll come along for the ride with us. And let's go find our spiritual ancestors. You know, in Britain they have a really popular show called Time Team, where they go around and look at archaeological remains of historical sites and explore them. So let's be a spiritual time team. Let's go find our spiritual ancestors and go see what their stories have to tell us about our lives today. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again.
Bye for now.
Oh, you have to say it the British way. Say it the British way. How would you say goodbye in British?
Cheerio.
There we go. And from Texas, we'll see y'all later.
Bye.